Jonnie Candito, the man, the myth, the legend. Jonnie is an OG YouTuber who's been posting for forever, and his program, Candito Forever, is a banger of a program. In fact, it's not really a program, it's almost a powerlifting way of life. As the name implies, you could use Candito's program for forever. You could start out as a complete beginner and go all the way up to an elite advanced athlete. It's amazing. And because of that, I can't possibly cover every detail of the program here. There's just too much. Instead, this video is going to be divided into 3 parts. I'm going to go over the basic components of the program. I'm going to talk about the salient features of Jonnie's programming, his philosophy, and then I'm going to give you a list of pros and cons so you can decide whether or not you should get the program. Let's get into it. To begin, the program is hosted within the Superset app. So when you sign up for the program, when you pay for it, you're actually signing up via Superset, and that's how you're going to access everything. There are so many different components to this. The cornerstone of Jonnie's programming, probably the milestone program, is his 8-week program for intermediate lifters. That's a program that almost everyone should end up running at some point if they use the Candito Forever program. But that's definitely not the only program there. There's a basic linear program for beginners. There's an intro phase, a 4-week intro program that's intended to be run before the 8-week program. There's the aforementioned 8-week program. There's a 4-week 3-rep max program, a 4-week 10-rep max program. There's a 10-week program for more advanced lifters. And there's also side quests, as Jonnie calls them. There's a 20-rep max squat program. There's an updated version of Candito's original 6-week program. There is just an infinite amount of stuff here. And so I have to say, if you're someone who's just interested in strength training and powerlifting, that alone is reason to buy this. You're going to learn so much from just looking at all this stuff. Another key detail that's worth noting is a lot of the programs I mentioned also have variants you can do. So you're not necessarily restricted to a certain number of days in a week. You can tailor the programs to meet your schedule and your needs, which is pretty fantastic. Now, in addition to all the programs that you can run, there's also Q&As and form checks. Jonnie at this point doesn't do them every single week, but there's a library of all the past videos and you can go through them and they're incredibly informative. Jonnie is very articulate and he's great about answering people's questions and really getting at the heart of his programming and addressing their concerns. Again, that feature alone is very valuable for the aspiring athlete or coach. I'm going to talk more about the Superset app itself in the pros and cons section, but it's a phone-based or a web-based app. You can use it on your phone, you can use it on your desktop. It has videos for all of the exercises. It shows what you should do week to week, and it's relatively easy and clear to follow. Now let me talk about the cornerstones, the key features of Candito's training and programming philosophy. I think that's really important because if you can understand how he's approaching this, it'll make it easier for you to evaluate the programs and run them yourselves. So for one, I would say that Candito has a squat-centric approach to his training. Candito has always been a very strong, efficient squatter, and I know he values the squat. He thinks of it as perhaps the most important of the lifts. And so his programs tend to be built around the squat. And what I mean by that is that, for example, in the intro program, the 4-week program, there's actually not a ton of deadlift work. You're actually using the squat to propel progress on the deadlift. And I would just say that there's kind of more attention and care given to the squat. And as such, the squat will provide a better barometer of your progress while you're running these programs. And I think that makes a lot of sense. The deadlift is a higher fatigue movement, and the squat really does help to build the deadlift. So by focusing on the squat, you can build both lifts simultaneously. Now again, I'm not saying he ignores the deadlift. You will absolutely make progress, but it's clear both from looking at the programming and just from me knowing a lot about Jonnie's thought process that his emphasis is more on the squat. Secondly, these programs are built around RPE, rate of perceived exertion. The intro program, the 4-week program that everyone should run before doing the 8-week programs, isn't entirely RPE based. In fact, he has you perform a variation of the competition lifts, and then you do percentage work based off of that variation. So for squat, you do pause squat. For deadlift, you do pause deadlift. And then for bench, you do a 3-second pause bench press. In my opinion, this is brilliant because it gives you recent, up-to-date data on your strength, and it allows you to use that data to figure out what else you should lift during that cycle. So again, in that first 4-week phase, you do maxes on those lifts, you do percentage work based off of those maxes, and then you also do RPE work. This enables you to learn more about RPE. You should also be recording the RPEs of that percentage work. And by the time you're done with that 4-week intro block, you're going to have a pretty decent understanding of how RPE works and how you should be rating it. So it works both as a training tool and a learning tool, which I think is fantastic. Lastly, the key feature to Jonnie's programming that I think is largely unique to him is this notion of hype. Hype is, in sports science terminology, arousal, but Jonnie doesn't like that word, so he uses the word hype. Hype refers to your emotional state. It refers to how revved up you are before performing a lift. And so Jonnie actually asks that lifters manipulate their hype. So you want to perform certain lifts in a high hype, high arousal state, and certain lifts in a low hype, low arousal state. And this actually impacts rate of perceived exertion. So even if you've never done this before, this should make sense intuitively, right? If you are really revved up and excited and ready to go, the weights will feel lighter. And so Jonnie is actually asking that you tap into that you manipulate your own emotional state and your own psychology to get the most out of your performance. Well, I think that that's incredible. I also think it's difficult to do. If you're not used to doing that, if you're not really in touch with your physiology in that way, it may not be immediately intuitive. Nonetheless, I really like that feature of this program, and I think it really speaks to Jonnie's experience and creativity as a lifter. He has been lifting for a long time, coaching for a long time, and he's observed this phenomenon in the real world. Because in the real world, the best lifters absolutely manipulate their physical and emotional state to achieve the best results possible. So through this program, he's actually teaching you how to do the same. And again, I think that's fantastic and absolutely worth exploring. All right, so let's talk about the pros and the cons of this program. There are a ton of pros. I think that Jonnie is incredibly creative and innovative, and I think that just by signing up for this program and looking at it, you're going to learn a ton. That for me is value enough. Honestly, $24.99. The price at the moment is $24.99. You could sign up for a month or two, just learn a bunch, and then quit, and that would be absolutely worth it, again, just as a learning tool. Secondly, I think the programs are really well designed and really thought out, and I have a hard time imagining that you couldn't find a way to make progress on these programs. There's something for beginner lifters, for early intermediate lifters, for intermediate lifters, for advanced lifters. There's the side quests, so if you just want to focus on something you've never done before. There's just so many different ways to make progress that, again, I just can't imagine you couldn't find a way to make it work. And additionally, if you were having trouble with the program, there are the Q&As. You can actually reach out to Jonnie, and he might be able to help you troubleshoot. Thirdly, the training is fun. Again, Jonnie has a really unique approach to programming. I don't think any other powerlifting programs work like this. There's some weird lifts in here that most people don't perform. There's snatch grip deadlifts for the conventional deadlift. There's constant tension squats for the high bar squat. Jonnie is a unique thinker, an iconoclast, and if you do this program, you will do things you've never done before. I've been training for over a decade. I've done powerlifting, I've done bodybuilding, and I have never trained in this way. And I think in particular, his approach to hypertrophy training is really unique and fascinating. He doesn't do a lot of your sort of standard training to failure. There's actually unique and distinct protocols that I think are really designed with the lifter's psychology in mind. You're going to train in ways that you never have before, and as a result, you're likely to get results that you never have before. That alone is a huge upside to this program. Now, there are some cons to this program too, and frankly, one of them is really big. So first off, and this perhaps may be unique to me, may be different for you, I do not like the Superset app. I don't like it at all. It's kind of clunky, it can be slow. If your gym is in a place where internet signal or Wi-Fi is bad, it can be really unreliable. There's nothing wrong with the graphics or the interface. I think it's relatively easy to use, but because it's a web-based app, it's going to have issues just as a result. And for me personally, because I'm someone who's trained with spreadsheets for years, I really don't like that it's hard to see what you're going to be doing week to week to week to week. Essentially, the way it works is that you open up a specific day and a specific week, and you see what your programming is for that day. Now, you can do that. You can open up every day and every week. It's unlocked for you. You don't have to go through it sequentially, but that's really tedious and slow. And so let's say, for example, if you're on week 1, day 2, and you want to see what week 2, day 2 is, it'll take you a bunch of clicks, and you'll have to go back and forth to be able to actually look at that and compare. For me, I'm someone who likes to know what my life is going to be like. I like to be able to plan in advance. I want to be able to see those days. I want to know when I need to perform at my best, and that's just really hard to do within this app. Secondly, The training is hard to execute. RPE can be hard to just understand and implement in practice. I will say I ran the 4-week intro program. I thought it was amazing and I had a ton of fun, and I actually made lifetime PRs on squat and deadlift. But my bench stalled out, and I'm fairly certain that's because I actually pushed too hard and my RPEs were too high on the bench. So that's my fault, absolutely. I'm not blaming the program, but again, I'm someone who's trained for over 10 years. I coach people, I work with athletes, and I had trouble doing this. So I think that there's definitely a pretty steep learning curve here, especially if you're used to more bodybuilding-oriented training, which is what I've been doing for the last couple years. So don't be surprised if your results, at least in the beginning, are a little inconsistent because you're still trying to figure out how the program actually works for you. My final point is important, but rather complicated. So again, I mentioned at the top, Jonnie Candito is an OG YouTuber. He's been on the screen for a long time. I have followed him for over a decade. I know him, parasocially through the internet pretty well. And I can tell you that Jonnie is a pretty neurotic guy. What I mean by that is he has very strong preferences, he sticks to them, and then he changes his mind. He cares a lot about what he does, and he does things very precisely. And that's reflected in the programming. So for example, version 1 of the Candito 8-week program is a 5-day training split where you train on Saturday and Sunday. For a lot of people, that sucks. That's not a good training split because people like to have their weekends free. But for Jonnie, the ordering and the sequencing of the days is paramount. He's designed the program to be run in that fashion. You can't just move the days around. And that to me reflects his neuroticism, which again, I share. I'm a neurotic person too. And I think that the people who are going to be most drawn to this program, the people who are most drawn to Jonnie Candito, are also probably neurotic people. That has 2 implications. 1, it means that if you aren't wired this way, you may not like training this way. And 2, I actually think it kind of biases Jonnie Candito's sample size. So again, I mentioned he's been coaching for a long time. These programs were trained and built in the real world, but they were trained and built on people like Jonnie. People who like Jonnie as a person and who want to train like him. And I think that's going to skew the results a bit. I think that these programs are great, and for the person with the right temperament and psychology, they're probably going to get amazing results. But if you aren't that person, this may not be for you, despite the fact that it's incredibly well thought out and that you can essentially run this program infinitely. So if we take all of that together, I think you should buy this program. I think even if you don't ever intend to run it, you should buy this program. It's incredibly informative. It's absolutely going to impact how I train people in the future, and has made me rethink some of my assumptions about hypertrophy and even just athletic performance in general. That alone is incredibly valuable. I also think the programming is fun and effective, and I think you're going to make serious gains. $24.99 is not a bad price for a monthly program. I don't know that you have to do it for forever, but I certainly think you could do it for a couple months, learn, see how you like it, and evaluate from there. Thanks so much for watching. If you like this video, please don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Appreciate you.